Hello, my name is Don Martini from SECO Vacuum Technologies in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us today for this discussion of the labor market in the post-COVID world and heat treating. Today, joining me is Mr. Jim Oakes, the president of Super Systems Incorporated in Cincinnati. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine, Don.
Thanks again for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, Jim, could you give us a little introduction about Super Systems and what you do?
Absolutely. So Super Systems is a technology provider for the heat treat industry. We have sensors, control technologies that we will manufacture and develop that heat treaters can take advantage of to lead for higher quality products that they produce, and then just a technology advantage for some of the processes that they run.
Very well. So you're a full controls technologies provider.
That's correct. Yes.
Very well.
Yeah, we kind of soup to nuts. If you think about how just in general technology works, you take it from a sensor all the way up to data recording from a data acquisition standpoint and everything in between. What we try to provide is all the tools that are necessary for heat treaters really to provide proof of process, to perform the process, and then have all the tools to do it right to meet the industry specifications like NADCAP or CQI-9, for example.
Very well, very well. So, in general, we're seeing some shifts, in the post-COVID market, shall we say. And in seeing that, one of the big effects is in the labor market. What's your take on that from feedback you're seeing in the market, both as a supplier to the market and also as a buyer, right?
Yeah.
You're buying from folks too, and especially in the controls arena, labor isn't the only problem; it's also supply, right?
Yeah. So there's no doubt the labor market started to really affect this industry pre-COVID. Really, if you look at in the United States anyway, our unemployment rate was very low, which it was very challenging to get the right labor in place. And the other thing too is if you look at the experience in the industry, what we have seen is there's a lot of incredible experience that's out there in the heat treat industry that's retiring. And there's just a lot of knowledge base that's not being replaced quickly. So there's really two aspects when it comes to the labor market and the challenges that you have. So right now, trying to find labor, and that's a global problem, is a real problem. You're just trying to find people to come in, do an honest day's work, and then losing that experience with people that have had years and years of the experience in understanding what heat treatment is and how to run this high-tech equipment.
Right. To your first point, you can go to the grocery store and see a we're hiring sign, right? I mean, they're everywhere. But the more to your second point, the experience is not easily replaceable, right? The operators actually know more about the process than maybe what the metallurgist does from a practical standpoint. They know when to stop the process to get the right results, and that type of experience is very difficult to pass from one person to another. Yeah. What role do you see automation technology playing in overcoming this challenge? Obviously, you still have to have the right people,
right?
But as technology advances, we're seeing more and more capability in, maybe not AI, but at least it's the knowledge that can be captured in the technology and passed on is more deep than it used to be.
Yeah.
What's your take on that in general?
Yeah, well, a couple things. The way I see the technology is you have to, the two things that you don't like to hear about in heat treatment is scrap and rework. So how do you avoid that? So there's opportunities to take advantage of all the sensor technology that's out there and the feedback mechanisms, so the controls can make better decision processes. And when you can do that, now you're lessening the opportunities for errors from the labor force. So if you can have a more automated process or some integration when it comes to developing the process as a part comes into a work cell or a part comes into a commercial heat treater, and developing that integration from shop floor management all the way down to the control system, well, you've eliminated opportunities for error, and that's really what I think a lot of people are trying to do today is remove the opportunities for error and reduce that scrap and rework, which obviously is very costly when it comes to heat treatment process and manufacturing.
Yeah, even in the pre-COVID market, shall we say, this was a hot topic, right? Industry 4.0 was starting to become a greater and greater conversation piece, and part of that was not only the process control itself, but also modeling the process, maybe even in a virtual world. As far as you mentioned, now we're controlling the entire process, taking the data and maybe even feeding it back into our decision-making process. Have you seen a big demand for that type of automation, or is it still we on the cusp of that yet, where it's a full circle or closed loop type approach?
I think there's a little bit of what I would call some AI that's built in, but a lot of that is for managing uptime on equipment.
Okay.
So when you're looking at, again, I go back to the sensors and all this I/O, taking advantage of that information and being able to feed it back into a command center where somebody could actually make decisions on that, or have the system make a decision. That's one piece. The second piece is really looking at how parts have been successfully processed, and then using that for future processes. So there's no doubt in the conversations that we have had, that's where people want to get to is we have a method or a process that has produced the exact metallurgical results provided for that the desire for that part. So how do you do that over and over and over again, and eliminate the variables or make decisions on the variables that, of course, always happen in a piece of equipment.
Right. So repeatability,
yes,
is key. And yes, we've seen the same. And so, taking that next step as far as, do you see it practical for a heat treater, or I guess any manufacturer for that matter, that's running a process like this, where maybe, they had, I don't know, 2 or 3, maybe 4 operators running maybe 8 or 10 pieces of equipment at one time? Do you see it feasible for automation to reduce the number of operators in these instances, or is it? And again, not that we're trying to replace jobs, but on the same token, if we don't have the qualified people, we have to come up with something to sustain the business. Right. So in this case, is that an option? Yeah,
I think for sure. I mean, I look at automation is a where the industry is going. There's no doubt, and that the driver for that most likely is because of the labor market, but also maintaining uptime on equipment and reduce downtime. So your utilization or percentages can be increased as long as the equipment's well maintained. There's no doubt that I see automation helping that process, and honestly, the technology is cost effective now. That you can incorporate some of these more process control related to not just the process itself, but also the material handling. So I see that, and I actually see an opportunity for more robotics being introduced, even into the single cell type of environment. The cost of the robotics has come down significantly. The challenge that you have is for a commercial heat treater versus a captive. The commercial is parts are changing all the time, but with that said, the technology around robotics is really enabling itself to maybe be more flexible and not have such a technology drain on the organization to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Jim, because how much further knowledge and experience does it take to have and maintain a piece of equipment like that, right? Because there's a lot of apprehension. You okay, maybe for a commercial heat treater, because of the variability in parts, it may be more difficult. But even for captives, there's lots of heat treating cells that honestly pose a significant safety risk to the operator that could easily be replaced with robotics. But they're apprehensive to take that step because of the additional maintenance or knowledge that they don't have in-house.
Right.
What are the easy ways to overcome that, or are there easy ways? Maybe not.
Well, easy way is there's not an easy way.
Okay.
But with that said, I think there's opportunities if you look at the younger generation coming into the industry, they are certainly willing to embrace technology. That is, that's going to be something that I think will help when it comes to some of the more technical capabilities and technical processes that you would build into your heat treatment processes. So I think that's going to help. I don't think it's easy to answer your question. There's a learning curve right now, and we're still trying to figure out really how does that work on a captive facility, same part over and over. I'm not going to oversimplify it, but it's easier. So you see that more often, where you have these big programs in place, same part being run. You can put in the robotics and the automation there. For the commercial shop, it's a little bit more challenging, and it needs to be flexible because you're investing in a piece of equipment that you want to be utilized for not just one process or one part. It needs to be taken advantage for others.
Right. So you mentioned a good topic, which is the transition from the existing staff to a younger generation that is more tech savvy. It's interesting because you're right. They're native to smartphones. They're native to having a PC or a tablet at their disposal all the time. How do we take advantage of that? I know for us it's a little bit of a struggle because thinking like they do is different, right? They automatically expect that type of interaction, which is not native to this industry. And in transitioning to it, at least from our perspective, will come. It's just when and how. What's your observation on that?
Well, you're right. It's we have to let that labor force that's coming in utilize the tools that they have, and technology is going to be one of those. The heat treatment industry is not new to data. It's not new to information. I've always said that SCADA applications are probably one of the most underutilized tools that you find in the industry, and we've been doing this for years. And usually the driver is the quality department because you want to have proof of process, customer expectations around being able to prove how you ran those parts. So I think it's underutilized because you have situations where there's access to information that people don't utilize. They're not looking at. Maybe they don't have time or the patience or what have you to look at that. The younger generation can consume that data probably more appropriate than people that haven't been brought up on computers and handheld devices. So I think there's an opportunity. So whether it's use of push notifications, whether it's use of data or information just on a handheld, I see that's an opportunity. It makes it an environment that is something that they're used to. It's not just racking parts. It's not just running a furnace. Now they have an opportunity to view things and look at things and use the technology that might be available to them.
Right. So, I've seen much the same in that there's a transition from being in front of the furnace, right? In front of the equipment, to understand and know and learn and watch from it, to see what it's telling you. Because let's face it, every piece of equipment does have somewhat of a mind of its own, right? To, hey, now I can sit in my office, I can look at the data, I can see what it's doing from the data, but that does take a fair amount of time and patience to understand the trends. And yeah, I agree that the newer generations do seem to be more data driven, and because they're native to it.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the SCADA. That is the portal, right? That is the way we understand the data, gather the data, analyze the data. There are different schools of thought when it comes to SCADAs. Couple things. You look at maybe a NADCAP type facility where they have to have data that's secured, that they can reproduce for their customer, versus maybe an automotive shop that, okay, they've got to track it for their CQI-9 requirements, but it's their data. They may share it with their end user, but still it's their data. Do you see a big difference in that, or basically is a one's shoe fits all type of approach?
I think that the data acquisition system is a data acquisition.
Okay.
And there has to be, there's certain requirements that both NADCAP and CQI-9 call out for, and write once, read only data, and it's something that you just have to be able to prove process. But I look at the SCADA piece is that, that's your foundation for artificial intelligence, because you now have a ton of data, a ton of information, that you can make decisions on. And, that's one of the areas that I think is not fully taken advantage of when it comes to information. The other is, I always give the story of the maintenance personnel that walk into captive or commercial heat treat shop. They come in every day to work, and all expectations of their day are shot the minute that they walk in, because they have a list that's on a piece of paper or from the night before. That is not what they planned on when they left that previous day. So I think what a lot of that predictive maintenance can be pulled from the existing SCADA systems. I know that it's happening today. And I think that the maintenance team is just one of those groups that actually could probably view the data that is specific to them, where they can actually make better decisions on what their day or what their week or what their month might look like based off the information that they're gathering.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but you mentioned predictive, right? The way that we can avoid downtime is taking action before there's a problem instead of waiting until there's after there's a problem, and being more proactive. And agreed, the way to do that is by analyzing the data and seeing those problems coming before they arrive, so that you can take the steps to offset that. So, okay, we've talked mostly about the furnace or equipment and personnel interaction. Let's take a little bit of a time to say, what do you see the interaction between, say, the equipment provider or even yourself and as the automation provider and the customer? Do you see online type relationships being more popular, and that okay, instead of getting an email for a request for quote on a part, it's going to be through maybe an online store or portal or something like that? It seems like, okay, lots of other industries have opened up Amazon stores, but maybe we're not quite there yet. Do you see that being part of this or not?
I think the transition is going to be the end user. And if you look at the end user, it's a generational shift.
Yes.
So I think you will find that, they would like to have their phone, a handheld device, look at that spare part, and not worry about having that conversation with somebody. So they can, again, they consume information. And so, I think that we might see that. The challenge there is that, as you know, there's always more to the story. And
yes.
And there's, so, and right now I think that with the transition of a lot of that experience leaving the industry, there's a lot to be gained for having a conversation with somebody that's either the provider or the supplier, because they can provide insight. And I think that even though I do think there'll be a shift there, we can't discount the opportunities that you can be gained from the a conversation.
Agreed. And, in my personal experience, I get that quite often. You get the phone call, hey, I'm seeing this happening with my furnace. I think it's this. And, after a 5-minute conversation with the customer, it's like, oh, okay. Did you consider these other aspects of what the furnace is telling you? Sometimes that leads to the solution. Sometimes it doesn't. But without that conversation, they'll be 3 or 4 steps behind.
Right.
And we don't want to lose that opportunity to have that conversation. Now, YouTube is everybody's friend.
Yeah.
You have a problem with your washer or dryer, and chances are you can you can find a YouTube video of someone encountering that same problem and fixing it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's opportunity for some assistance in an online library of instruction videos or something to that effect. But again, it doesn't really replace that
Right.
human interaction, and I agree. So yeah, we're seeing somewhat the same, that the online interaction will be demanded, but to what extent, I don't know yet.
Right. Yeah, the use of videos, for sure, we've taken full advantage of trying the things that are specific, whether it's a calibration or whether it's setting up a data point or some of the technology. We've used those tools, the video tools, and have posted those online, and we've had very positive feedback from that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've done some of the same, just as a reference. It may save the phone call and it gets them to their solution faster,
Quicker, yeah.
which everybody wants to, as
Yeah.
you said, minimize downtime.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's take a few minutes and speak about one other topic, and that is the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've all been suffering from the supply chain issue for the last several months to a year. It seems that it's maybe turning the tide, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
What's been your overall experience with that? Have you seen a big shift in your supply chain, or is it pretty much kept up?
No, we have experienced some of the same challenges that others. If you think about what some of the industries have experienced with just chip shortages, as a equipment supplier that takes advantage of technology and chips, we've experienced that as well. Mm-hmm. We were able to get on top of that early on, mm-hmm. And have focused on making sure that we have inventories. But mm-hmm. but there's still some whiplash out there from mm-hmm. From what's happened. There's still parts and pieces that need to be substituted because you can't get a part maybe that you've used in the past. So it's requiring more engineering resources mm-hmm. To achieve that, which I know you guys have gone through the same thing. So I think the light's at the end of the tunnel. I don't know how far the tunnel is at this point, but every day is a different day, and maybe brings a new challenge. I feel like some of the lead times that we've heard of have shortened, mm-hmm. and that has some positive. When we look at it's positive at looking at the future from that standpoint.
Sure. Yeah, and Jim, we've seen much the same. We've had to take steps to early on to prevent being in that situation, and thus far, okay, we've had to make some substitutions that are atypical, mm-hmm. but we've managed to keep on track.
Yeah.
But agreed, it's tough to say exactly when that will end and if it will ever be quite the same as it was. Chances are probably pretty good that it won't be completely the same. But regardless, we'll keep going.
Right.
That being said, do you see any shifts in shall we say architecture of the controls, or the approach to to the basis of controls, and I'm now talking about like PLCs, coming as a result of that, or is there maybe ways that you can shrink the number of parts required and still do the same thing, combining processors with cards or something to that effect? Is that on the horizon, or?
No, I don't see that. I don't see it changing. I think what we'll find is that there's going to be more sensor technology and more information that will be utilized to make better decision processes. Again, it's all about reducing scrap and rework and creating a user experience that is going to limit mistakes. So, when it comes to the controls, you get more processing power with smaller racks or smaller size processors, but I don't see that changing. I think actually you'll see that because it can handle more and do it quicker, you'll see that more data and more information will be coming in, and you're making better decisions, or the equipment's making better decisions that maybe you used to rely on somebody else to make, and now it's the technology that's providing that. And then I take those components and that passes off to the SCADA system, which I see the opportunities for that system really being able to make better decisions as well. So, you look at a lot of other industries, they're using the technology to help provide that artificial dashboard or artificial intelligent dashboard. So you don't have to dig through the data. It's a dashboard that's relevant to who the stakeholder is at that time. I absolutely see that being a bigger part of the technology, and that's access everywhere. So you're pushing that data to handheld devices, so that's readily available. So from an aspect of technology, I just see utilizing some of the infrastructure that's already there, but I don't see necessarily the amount of data that's coming in or the processing necessarily changing.
Okay, so basically we have more demand for processing power. So okay, if they do change, we're changing because we have more demand. We're going to use more of their capability to present the data in a usable form that can be easily analyzed. Okay. And then that will help with, again, making decisions, like you say, through the equipment, and giving the personnel the right information to make decisions. Okay, so as we close here, looking at the state of things, we hope that we're on the beginning this transition to a new generation of folks as the labor market changes, not because necessarily wanted to, but because we have to a point. In your mind, are you seeing a return or an increase in demand for more automation already, or is it maybe lagging a bit yet? What's your take?
No, I absolutely see more automation. That transition's already happening. Labor market started to drive that again pre-COVID, and is continuing to drive that. The cost of technology. Just look at the cost of a robotic arm. That's something that's within reach. You do have to have some of the technical skills to be able to support that, but I see that, where the technology is going to play a major role in how companies will successfully heat treat parts and achieve the manufacturing processes that are in place. There's no doubt that we'll see that in heat treat.
Great, and yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we see much the same.
Yep.
So it seems like we're going down that path.
Yep.
So, with that, Jim, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a great chance to talk with you a little bit about automation.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks SECO for having me.
Sure. And I want to thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session, and we look forward to seeing you again.